What is it that China does best? If you discount the Chinese counterfeits, it is provocation that China is infamous for. Be it harassing the Philippines at sea, bullying Vietnam, or passing baseless statements on India. Here's the latest. Beijing has said that India does not have the right to develop the area China calls South Tibet. And which area is that? The Indian state of Arunachal Pradesh. China says India should not carry out development in Arunachal Pradesh. Why? Because China claims Arunachal Pradesh. As per Reuters, India is planning to spend $1 billion to expedite the construction of 12 hydropower stations. All of these will be in Arunachal Pradesh. In fact, the Indian Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has reportedly approved $89.85 million in assistance to each hydropower project in northeastern India. Reuters is reporting, and I'm quoting here, the plans for the hydropower stations are expected to be announced in the 2024-2025 federal budget that Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government will unveil, quote unquote. The government of India has not said anything yet, but that has not stopped the dragon from seeing red. China is calling this development work illegal and invalid. In fact, earlier this year, China published a list assigning invented names to 30 places in Arunachal Pradesh. India was not surprised. China has been routinely playing this name game since 2017. That was the first time a list was published with an attempt to rename 6 places of Arunachal Pradesh. In 2021, the second list was published. It mentioned 15 places. In 2023, the third list was published with 11 names. And the latest list came on the heels of Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Arunachal Pradesh. He inaugurated the Sela Tunnel. This tunnel is built at an altitude of 13,000 feet. It is near the line of actual control. The tunnel provides all-weather connectivity to Tawang and other forward areas bordering China. Beijing protested this visit, and now it is protesting the news of power plants in Arunachal Pradesh, calling the Indian state its own. That's the level of delusion we are dealing with, one that's hard to cure. Just last week, India's External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, met his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi in Kazakhstan. The two agreed to intensify efforts to resolve issues along the LAC. Cut to the present. China is once again playing its broken record on Arunachal Pradesh. India, on its part, has been calling for peace for a while now. In April, the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi said, and I'm quoting here, "It is my belief that we need to urgently address the prolonged situation on our borders so that the abnormality in our bilateral interactions can be put behind us," quote unquote. But does China even want peace? From Doklam and Galwan to its compulsive name game, Chinese actions hint at provocation, not peace. And the world understands Chinese design, its appetite for conflict. Take the United States, for example. It has been keeping a close eye on Chinese provocation and salami slicing of neighborhood land. Earlier this year, the U.S. State Department said, and I'm quoting here, "The U.S. recognizes Arunachal Pradesh as Indian territory, and we strongly oppose any unilateral attempts to advance territorial claims by incursions or encroachments, military or civilian, across the line of actual control," quote unquote. The world has been preparing for a Chinese escalation, perhaps not in the Himalayas, but in the seas, where China has conflicts with numerous countries, from Vietnam to Brunei, Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, Japan, to name just a few. Now, the last two countries I mentioned are US allies. Washington has time and again said that it is committed to defending its allies should a war break out. Earlier this month itself, Japan and the Philippines put aside the memories of the World War and signed a defense pact. They joined hands to fight China. The Reciprocal Access Agreement allows exchange of armed forces for training and joint military exercises between Tokyo and Manila, a very significant development. In April this year, Washington reaffirmed its ironclad commitment to defend the Philippines and Japan. The preparation for the worst has been part of the plan for a while now. What happens if a war breaks out? What happens if Chinese provocations trigger an exchange of fire? Does China stand a chance against US allies? Just look at the sheer size of the US Pacific Fleet. There are 200 ships, 1,500 aircraft, 150,000 personnel. The US has bases in Japan, South Korea, the Philippines. If and when a war breaks out, America will be pulling in troops from bases around the world. How many are there? The US has military presence in over 80 countries, and it has at least 750 bases around the world. What about China, you ask? It has some 3,304 total military aircraft. The US has 13,209. China has 1,207 fighter jets. The US has 1,854. China has 913 military choppers. The US has 5,737. What about attack helicopters? China has 281. The US has 1,000. Look at the naval power. China has a fleet strength of 730. The US 472. China has 3 helicarriers. The US has 9. What about submarines? China 61, the US 64. And what about destroyers? China 49, the US 75. And we are not counting the land power or even the resources of US allies or NATO countries that are policy bound to defend the US. Now, let me ask you this, what do these numbers really tell you? That China is better off not provoking other countries or risking a war, because should America get pulled to a firefight with China, Beijing will be up for a thrashing defeat. To stay up to speed with the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.